I've always been Eleanor Vance, the invisible daughter, the one no one remembers at the charity galas, the one never pictured in the family photos lining Richard Vance's mansion walls. My half-brothers, they shine like polished silver while I exist somewhere outside the frame, just a name on a monthly allowance check. But when I take off the apron after my cafe shift and step into the tiny, worn-out space of Hope Springs, I become someone else. Here, I'm not the forgotten daughter of a billionaire. I'm the founder, the guide, the steady hand for dozens of children who've been told, "You can't." I never wanted to look back at the Vance estate until the day Noah, my little half-brother, ended up in a wheelchair, and all their money, their perfect world, couldn't bring him back to life. That's when they came looking for me. I never imagined I'd end up serving coffee to corporate interns younger than me. Their watches worth more than my rent. But here I am, wiping tables at a corner cafe in Queens, New York, pulling double shifts and pretending the Vance name doesn't belong to me. Richard Vance, billionaire empire builder, a man with a perfectly curated family image, has 2 shining sons and a wife who floats through galas like royalty. And me? I'm Eleanor, the daughter from the relationship he had before his rise, the one whose mother raised her alone until cancer took her. Sure, he pays for my apartment and school, but never with a father's presence. No birthday calls, no proud moments, just wire transfers. I learned early on that his money came with invisible strings. Stay away, stay silent, stay small. But there's a life he doesn't know about. Every evening, I shed the tired waitress skin and step into Hope Springs, a community center I co-founded with Maya Rodriguez, my closest friend, and the only person who knows both my worlds. Hope Springs is a sanctuary for children with disabilities, a space where they're not pitied, not treated like burdens, but encouraged to move, dance, try. When Maya and I opened the doors 4 years ago, we had no funding, just determination and donated space. We held bake sales, we taught free workshops, we applied for every grant under the sun. It's been hard, and sometimes the lights almost went out, but the laughter of the kids, the small victories, the shaky first steps kept us going. Tonight, I'm kneeling beside Lily, a 7-year-old with cerebral palsy, helping her shift weight onto her stronger leg. She beams at me, sweaty and determined. "You're doing it, Lily," I whisper. Her mother watches from the sidelines, tears in her eyes. This is where I feel whole, where my last name doesn't matter. But just as I'm packing up mats for the night, Maya rushes in, her face pale. "Did you see the news?" she asks breathlessly. I shake my head. "It's Noah," she says quietly. "Your little brother. There was an accident." My stomach tightens. I barely know Noah. We've shared maybe 5 words at formal events, but the image of his bright eyes flashes in my mind. He's just a kid. I don't ask why Maya cares. She knows me well enough to understand the invisible pull of family, even one that's tried to erase me. "Hospital?" I manage to ask. She nods, handing me her phone. The headline blares across the screen. "Vance heir injured in car crash. Family requests privacy." I stand frozen, the mat slipping from my hands. For a moment, I'm 10 years old again, sitting outside my father's gated estate, waiting for a birthday that never came. For a moment, I hear my mother's voice, soft and tired, telling me, "It's okay, we don't need them." But this isn't about me. It's about a boy who right now might be feeling the same kind of abandonment I've spent a lifetime carrying. I pull off my name tag, heart pounding. "I have to go," I tell Maya. She grabs my arm gently. "Eleanor, are you sure?" I look her straight in the eyes. "No," I say honestly, "but maybe he needs someone who understands what it feels like to be left behind." And with that, I walk out into the cold night, the Vance name weighing heavier on my shoulders than it has in years. I hadn't been to the Vance estate in years. As I approached the towering gates the next morning, I felt the same old tightening in my chest, The feeling I used to get as a child when I stood here waiting to be let in, only to be told, "Not today, Eleanor." But today, they let me in. A sleek black car waited by the front steps. Inside, Noah's nanny sat with red eyes, clutching her phone. I barely nodded. My focus was on the house, where everything gleamed too perfectly. Inside, the air was thick with tension. I could hear raised voices down the marble hall. "We've already hired the best!" Camilla Vance's sharp voice snapped. "We don't need some community nonsense." I stepped closer. Through the open door, I saw my father standing by the window, his shoulders hunched in a way I'd never seen. Camilla, his wife, paced like a storm. "Noah refuses to go to therapy, Richard," she said, her voice brittle. "He just stares out the window." "We can't force him. He's terrified," my father said quietly. For a second, they both fell silent. I didn't plan to speak, but something inside me surged up. I cleared my throat. "I can help." Camilla spun around, her eyes narrowing. "You?" she sneered. "What are you even doing here?" Richard turned slowly, his eyes meeting mine. There was a flicker of recognition, maybe even guilt, but it passed too quickly. "Thank you, Eleanor, but we have this under control." I took a breath. "With respect, you don't." Camilla's mouth opened, but I didn't let her interrupt. "I run Hope Springs," I continued. "I've spent the last 4 years helping kids like Noah find joy again. You can throw money at the best doctors, but they can't reach him if his heart's shut down." For a second, I thought Richard might actually listen. But then Camilla stepped in, her arms crossed. "This is family business," she said coldly. "And you," she let the word hang, dripping with dismissal, "are not part of this family." The word stung more than I wanted to admit. Before I could answer, a soft voice came from behind me. "Eleanor?" I turned. Noah sat in his wheelchair, thin, pale, his blonde hair falling over his eyes. "You're my sister, right?" he asked shyly. I knelt beside him, forcing a smile. "Yeah, buddy, I'm Eleanor." He gave a small, uncertain smile. "I remember you from the Christmas party. You brought me a toy car." My throat tightened. "I did," I whispered. Can you show me the place where you work?" Noah asked quietly. "The one with the dancing kids?" Camilla looked like she was about to explode, but Richard lifted a hand, stopping her. "I want to go," Noah said softly. And just like that, the room shifted. Richard's eyes moved from his son to me, a long, weighted glance. "Fine," he said quietly. "Take him. But if anything goes wrong—" I didn't let him finish. "It won't," I promised. As I wheeled Noah out, he clutched my hand tightly. "I'm scared, Eleanor," he whispered. I squeezed his fingers gently. "Me too," I admitted. "But sometimes scared is where the best stories start." And together, we left the mansion, two strangers bound by blood and maybe, just maybe, by something deeper. When I opened the doors of Hope Springs for Noah, his eyes grew wide. The center was nothing fancy: chipped walls, mismatched chairs, a floor patched in places with duct tape. But inside, the air buzzed with laughter and music. Kids in wheelchairs spun slowly to soft rhythms. Others shuffled with braces on their legs, guided by patient volunteers. Here, no one stared, no one judged. Noah clung to me as we entered, his small fingers tight around mine. "Are you sure it's okay I'm here?" he whispered. I crouched to meet his eyes. "It's more than okay, Noah," I said softly. "This place is made for you." Maya spotted us from across the room, her face breaking into a surprised smile. "This is him?" she asked, coming over. I nodded. "Maya, meet Noah. Noah, this is Maya. She helps me run this place." Noah gave a shy wave, his shoulders hunched. I could feel how small and overwhelmed he was. He'd grown up in a world of silk suits and marble floors. This was the opposite: noisy, chaotic, raw. A little girl named Chloe rolled by in a glitter-covered wheelchair, stopping beside Noah. "Hey," she said simply. "Want a race?" Noah's eyes widened. I can't," Chloe grinned. "Neither can I. That's why it's fun." To my amazement, Noah gave the tiniest, trembling smile. I helped him settle near the main room, watching as Maya gently introduced him to a few kids his age. For the first time in days, he wasn't just the injured Vance heir. He was a kid among kids, fumbling, giggling, unsure, but alive. From the corner of the room, I caught Richard Vance's driver pacing outside the window, phone glued to his ear. The family hadn't truly let Noah go. They were watching, controlling from afar. But in here, their world didn't matter. Maya came to stand beside me. "Are you sure about this, Eleanor?" she asked quietly. "He's a sweet kid, but his family, they're not used to places like this." I let out a slow breath. "I know." "You're not just bringing him here for him, are you?" she added gently. I hesitated. "No," I admitted. "Maybe I'm bringing him here for me too." Because standing here, watching Noah slowly warm up to the other kids, I realized something. All my life, I'd been waiting for a crack in the Vance wall, some chance to prove I wasn't just the invisible daughter. But maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about proving anything to them. Maybe it was about giving Noah a taste of the freedom I'd fought so hard to claim for myself. Across the room, Noah tried moving his wheelchair on his own for the first time, his arms trembling with the effort. Chloe cheered beside him. "You're doing it!" she shouted. He looked over at me, his face lighting up. And in that moment, I saw it. Not just a scared little boy, not just my father's son, but a fighter. And maybe, if I could help him believe in that, it would be the one thing no amount of money, doctors, or polished family portraits could ever buy. By the second week, Noah was a regular at Hope Springs. He laughed louder now, moving his wheelchair with shaky but determined arms, racing Chloe across the uneven floor, beaming when he won. His world had opened just a little, and mine, I realized, had too. But outside, the storm was brewing. I knew it the moment I stepped outside after class and saw the black car waiting by the curb. Camilla Vance stood beside it, dressed in a crisp designer coat, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. She didn't belong here, in this worn-out neighborhood, and she knew it. "Eleanor," she said coolly when I approached, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms. "About Noah?" She smiled, tight-lipped. "About boundaries." She wasted no time. "You've had your little experiment," she began, "but Noah is part of our family. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but we have professionals for this. You're not needed." The words hit me harder than I expected. Not needed. Just like when I was 8, watching Camilla pose for photos with her perfect family while I stood at the edge of the frame, invisible. I drew a slow breath. "With respect, Camilla, Noah asked to come here. He's making progress. He's happy." Her smile hardened. "And he will be happier surrounded by the right people. You've had your fun, Eleanor, but this isn't your place." Behind her, Richard stepped out of the car, looking unusually tired. "Camilla," he said softly. "Enough." She turned to him, surprised. "Richard?" He raised a hand. "I've seen the videos Noah's been sending me. I haven't seen him smile like that in weeks." Camilla's mouth tightened. "This is a circus, Richard." "It's working," he said simply. For a heartbeat, we all stood frozen. Then quietly, Richard turned to me. "Tomorrow night there's a gala," he said. "The press will be there. They'll want to see Noah. Would you come?" I stared at him, stunned. "Come?" I echoed. "To stand with us," he said, "with the family." The words I had longed to hear, but now they tasted strange. I thought of Hope Springs, of the mismatched chairs and handmade posters, of Noah racing across the cracked floor, grinning at his own small victories. I wasn't sure where I belonged anymore. But I looked at Noah, watching nervously from the center, and I knew one thing. Wherever he needed me, that's where I'd be. I nodded slowly. I'll be there. Camilla's glare could have frozen the sun, but for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The gala was everything I remembered, and everything I'd learned to hate. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above rows of tuxedos and evening gowns. Waiters glided between tables with trays of champagne, and photographers circled like hawks, searching for their next glossy headline. I stood near the edge, feeling out of place in my simple navy dress. Maya had helped me pick it, whispering, "You'll look stunning, no matter what they say." But surrounded by Camilla Vance's glittering friends, I felt like a misfit in plain sight. "Hey," came a small voice. I turned to see Noah in his wheelchair, wearing a sharp little suit, his blonde hair neatly combed. His eyes sparkled when he saw me. "You came?" he said softly. I smiled and knelt beside him. "Of course I did." He reached out, squeezing my hand tightly. "I'm scared," he whispered. I squeezed back. "Me too." A hush fell over the room as Richard Vance took the stage. The billionaire CEO, the headline magnate, the man who never showed weakness. Tonight, even he looked a little nervous. "Thank you all for joining us," he began, voice smooth but taut. "Tonight, we celebrate the work of the Vance Foundation and our commitment to pediatric rehabilitation." I felt a ripple go through the crowd. Of course, the reporters were here for the big reveal, the family's new charitable focus, the perfect PR moment. But then Richard's eyes found me in the crowd. "And tonight," he continued, his voice softening, "I want to introduce someone who has made a difference I never expected." Heads turned, whispers rippled. I felt the burn of 100 eyes. "This is Eleanor Vance," Richard said, motioning me forward. "My daughter." The room fell utterly silent. I froze. For years, I had been erased from this family's public life, a ghost, a footnote. Now, under the blaze of chandeliers and cameras, I was being pulled center stage. I walked slowly, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might faint. Noah watched me, his smile small but proud. Richard placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. "Eleanor runs Hope Springs, a community center that has given my son something no doctor or specialist could. Joy, hope, the freedom to lead his own recovery." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Flashbulbs popped. I wanted to run, but Noah's eyes kept me grounded. Richard took a deep breath. "I have made many mistakes," he said, his voice dipping lower, "including the mistake of underestimating my own daughter." A reporter called out, "Mr. Vance, are you saying Eleanor's leading the foundation's new work?" I opened my mouth to protest, but Richard nodded firmly. "Yes," he said simply. "She is." Camilla stood frozen at her table, her face pale, her eyes sharp as glass. I looked down at Noah, who beamed up at me, and in that moment I understood. This wasn't about me stepping into the Vance spotlight to prove myself. This was about creating a light bigger than all of us. For Noah, for the kids at Hope Springs, for every child who had been told, "You can't." I stood taller, the cameras flashing, the murmurs rising. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was exactly where I was meant to be. The days after the gala blurred into a whirlwind. Reporters camped outside Hope Springs, snapping photos of kids arriving for therapy. My inbox flooded with interview requests. Overnight, I became the billionaire's secret daughter, the woman who'd saved her half-brother when the best doctors couldn't. But behind the headlines, I knew the truth. I wasn't a miracle worker. I was just Eleanor, a girl who had spent her life on the outside, quietly building something meaningful, never imagining it would collide so explosively with the world that had rejected her. Late one night, I sat in the Hope Springs office, flipping through the old scrapbook Maya and I had made when we first opened. Photos of smiling kids, hand-drawn posters, scrawled notes of thanks. This was the world I knew, The world I loved. But now, Richard Vance was calling every day, asking to meet, to discuss the future. Camilla had gone silent, but her cold, watchful eyes followed me at every public event. Noah, meanwhile, clung to me, calling every night, begging for me to come over. I felt the walls closing in. "Eleanor," Maya said gently one evening, sitting beside me, "are you sure you're okay with all this?" I looked at her, my throat tight. "I don't know," I whispered. "They want me to step in, to take a role in the foundation, to sit at the Vance table. But I don't know if I want that or if I just want Noah to keep smiling." She touched my hand. "You don't owe them your life, Eleanor. You've already given them a gift they couldn't buy." That night I got the call. "Eleanor, come to the house," Richard said. "Tonight. It's important." I almost said no, almost let it go. But a part of me, the part that still remembered waiting by the gate as a child, needed to know what he'd say. The Vance mansion was ablaze with light when I arrived. Camilla sat stiffly in the living room, her hands clasped, lips tight. Richard paced near the fireplace, his expression unreadable. Noah rushed to me, flinging his arms around my waist. "Eleanor," he beamed, "I showed Dad my solo. Did you see the video I sent you?" I hugged him tightly, blinking back sudden tears. "You were amazing," I whispered. Richard cleared his throat. "Noah, why don't you go upstairs for a bit?" Noah looked reluctant, but he obeyed. As the door closed, Richard turned to me. "I owe you an apology," he began quietly. Camilla stiffened but said nothing. I crossed my arms, heart hammering. "I'm listening." He let out a long breath. "I've spent my life controlling everything. The business, the image, even this family. And in the process, I left you out." I felt a sting in my eyes. "I was wrong," he continued, "about you, about what matters. And I want to make it right." He gestured toward a folder on the table. "I want you to lead the Foundation's new division for community programs. Full resources, full authority. I want Hope Springs to grow, to reach more kids. And I want you at the center of it." My breath caught. Camilla finally spoke, her voice sharp. "Richard, think carefully. This is a huge responsibility. Richard cut her off. "She's my daughter, Camilla." The room fell into stunned silence. I closed my eyes for a moment, grounding myself. For years, I had dreamed of this. Recognition, a seat at the table, a place in the family. But now that it was here, I saw it for what it was. An offer wrapped in guilt, in image, in the need to fix a public wound. I opened my eyes. "I'm not here because I want a family title," I said quietly. "I'm here for Noah. I'm here because Hope Springs matters, not because the Vance name will make it look better on paper." Richard nodded slowly, understanding. "So, will you accept?" I took a long, shaky breath. "I'll work with the Foundation," I said at last, "but on one condition." He raised an eyebrow. "I decide where the money goes. No press control, no Vance branding on every wall. This isn't about the family's image, it's about the kids." For a moment, Richard looked almost relieved. "Agreed." Camilla looked away, furious, but I no longer cared. In that moment, I wasn't the invisible daughter or the charity case. I was Eleanor Vance, leader, builder, fighter, and I was just getting started. 3 months later, the mansion was no longer my battlefield. I spent my days at Hope Springs, surrounded by the sounds of laughter, music, and determination. With the Foundation's funding, we had doubled our programs, hired more instructors, and brought in adaptive equipment we had only dreamed of before. Noah came 3 times a week. He was no longer the timid, pale boy who had first rolled through our doors. Now, he challenged his friends to races, learned small dance routines, and even helped the younger kids find their balance. His eyes sparkled with a confidence I had never seen, not even at home. One afternoon, after a particularly joyful class, I found him sitting quietly by the window, looking out at the street. "Eleanor," He asked softly, "Are you really my sister?" I sat beside him, heart squeezing. "Yeah, buddy," I whispered. "I am." He played with the edge of his sleeve, thoughtful. "Why didn't you ever come over before?" I swallowed hard. "Because sometimes adults make mistakes, big ones. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." He smiled, small but sure, and leaned his head against my arm. Meanwhile, at the Vance house, things had shifted, but only a little. Camilla remained distant, polite but cold. Richard called occasionally, asking for updates, sometimes even visiting the center, watching from the sidelines as if learning how to be part of something without controlling it. But the biggest change wasn't theirs. It was mine. I no longer craved their approval. I no longer waited by the gate, hoping they'd remember me. Now I stood tall because of the life I'd built, the community I'd nurtured, and the kids I fought for every day. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the last of the children were picked up, Richard arrived unexpectedly. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, watching me stack chairs. "I don't want to intrude," he said. I wiped my hands on a towel. "What's up?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "I wanted to thank you, not just for Noah, but for teaching me how to follow." I stared at him, surprised. "Follow?" He gave a small, wry smile. "All my life I thought leading meant control, power, planning every move. But you showed me something else." For a long moment we stood in the quiet room, father and daughter, not quite healed, not quite broken. Then he said softly, "I know I can't change the past, Eleanor, but if you're willing, maybe we can build something new." I took a breath. I wasn't sure what something new meant, but I knew this. I was no longer the girl waiting outside his world. Now I was standing firmly in my own. And if he wanted to meet me here, he'd have to walk through the doors himself. 1 year later, Hope Springs looked nothing like the small patchwork studio where it all began. The new facility gleamed with light, not because of fancy glass or polished floors, but because of what it held: laughter, movement, joy. Children in braces, in wheelchairs, on crutches, danced freely across the open space. At the far end, Noah was leading a small group, demonstrating a simple, practiced routine. His face lit up every time he nailed a step, and his friends cheered him on. Watching him, you'd never guess the quiet, broken boy he'd been a year ago. I stood near the window, arms crossed, smiling softly. Maya came to stand beside me, nudging my shoulder. "Look at him," she murmured. "Your little brother's turning into a star," I laughed. "Yeah," I said, "he's come a long way." Richard Vance came by often now, not as a CEO dropping by to supervise, but as a father learning to listen. He donated quietly, stayed in the background, and most remarkably, learned how to step aside. Camilla never came, and that was okay. As the event wrapped up that evening, our first big annual showcase, Noah rushed over, grinning ear to ear. "Eleanor, did you see me?" he asked breathlessly. I ruffled his hair. "I saw you, champ. You were incredible." Richard approached, standing awkwardly at the edge of our circle. "Thank you," he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" He hesitated. "For not giving up on him, for not giving up on me." I offered a small smile. "I didn't do it for you," I said gently, "but I'm glad you're here." He nodded, eyes glimmering with something I'd once thought impossible: humility. That night, back at my small apartment, I sat by the window looking out at the city lights. I thought about everything that had changed. Hope Springs had expanded to 2 more cities. I was no longer just the forgotten daughter. Noah was thriving. And me? I was no longer defined by the Vance name or the absence of it. I was Eleanor Vance, builder, fighter, sister, leader, and for the first time in my life, I felt whole. As I closed my notebook, the one where I still scribbled goals, dreams, and messy thoughts, I whispered softly to myself, "You did it. not because of the money, not because of the name, but because I had learned to follow my own path. And somewhere in the quiet between memory and hope, I knew this. The best steps we ever take are the ones no one else can lead for us. We have to choose them ourselves.